Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here tonight. I want to start out by asking you guys all a quick question because, first of all, who here, well, there's going to be a lot of hand raising in this, so if you're feeling a bit lazy, I'm really sorry, you're going to have to put your hand up. But who here had a glass of wine, like at the beginning? So you guys are all a little bit tired right now, right? So I'm going to make sure put your hands up again. You'll be the first people that, I'm like that really bad teacher that finds the people that look the most uncomfortable in the room and pick them to answer questions. So I will look for the people who decide to get drunk at the beginning of this and are now a little bit tired. Victims tonight. And I want to start out though by asking what brought you to this event this evening? And remember that I'm going to be selecting the people who are drinking if no one else puts their hand up. So what brought you here tonight? What are you looking to get out of, what were you looking to get out of this evening? Or were you forced to come here? For those of you who made choices to come here, what informed your choice to come here tonight to see Christine and I and do that great little video thing?
Connect with my classmates after school. We usually go out a lot with them. Yeah.
So social, so you're the drinkers. So you were forced to come here? Yes? Great. Learn more about the industry. Yes?
Make a video.
So you're ready to leave now. You've already done your thing, right? And a special shout out to table number 4. Right, you all chose to sit with me when I looked like that grumpy girl in the back sitting on her own, so thank you very much for making me not feel like I was just on my own here. Christine too. And her video is really good, and I've got to tell you guys they have a natural advantage because I think you said it's going to be on TalentEgg. I didn't know that. And TalentEgg has, you'll hear the story after, but it's an advantage, I'll tell you that. But I'll promote you all equally, well, anyways. I don't do that. It'll be up to the choices. So what I'm going to be talking about today, and nobody said, can I ask you, is anybody here sort of scared about entering the workforce? Is anybody here feeling a little bit of that fear around entering the workforce? Okay, good. We have an honest room. Everybody who didn't put up your hands, you're lying. There's no such thing as somebody that's about to enter the workforce that is a little bit worried about what's next, because everybody's a little bit worried about the unknown. Whether you've been in the workforce before, which is a lot of you that I spoke with have already been in the workforce, you have some expectation or not, that the security of school is very different than the just openness and possibility, but also, what's the opposite of like, what's the word of being scared? Fear, or yeah, the openness of this world beyond the sort of closed school system where you have a gym on campus, you have a gym on campus, right? Yeah, gym on campus and a library and like all these student services that kind of help you and usher you through everything. And so the theme of this presentation is about this concept that we developed through a couple of conversations at TalentEgg on being exceptional. And the reason that we came up with this concept is because we know that as students, and especially such engaged students such as you that are, spend your evenings at events like this, you've probably been to a number of resume workshops and how to use Twitter and how to use LinkedIn and all the different kinds of stuff, all this information that I can probably give you isn't going to be new. You can get that information again in person. You can get it online on sites like TalentEgg. Hands up if you've heard about TalentEgg. If you've heard of TalentEgg before this, oh good, a lot of you, great. And so we wanted to put together something that was going to be inspirational and that was going to, at the end of it, make you do something to get going and get engaged and get started with hatching. Get it? Career. And if you don't think that's funny, you will not think I'm funny for the next hour. I'll be making lots of exciting jokes. Think it. And the concept of being exceptional has 3 pillars, 3 sort of areas of focus. And the first is to approach problems with creativity. It's to innovate in everything that you do, and it's to hustle. And Christine talked about hustle a little bit, and that's that thing that I want you all to leave with, this idea of hustle, of taking control, of doing something. And then finally, self-reflection. But before I get into that, I want to give a bit of background on the TalentEgg story. I think like 5 of you, just trying to make conversation because you thought I looked bored, or you thought that's just my face. Like, that's just how I am. I'm a bit shy, so I just, like, if anybody noticed, I was on my own a lot. So a lot of you trying to make me feel comfortable asked, so like had to get started with TalentEgg, and I said, well, I'm going to tell you all about it when I get on stage. I'll see how short I really am. And so TalentEgg got started based on my own experience facing that sort of really scary transition from school into the workplace. It was 2005, and I was graduating. I was in my 4th year at Queen's University. Any Queen's people here that went at one point? Yeah? Cool. And you're from Kingston? Great. Best school, whatever. That doesn't go over well in any crowd that's not a Kingston crowd. But students, if you know anything about students that go to Queen's, is that they believe that they go to the best school in the country. And I was approaching graduate, and that didn't help in that whole coming to your 4th year and realizing like, oh, I actually don't have anything lined up for next year. So that was me. I was in my 4th year, 2005. For those of you who thought I looked like a teenager, I'm actually close to 30. And that was a joke. That's something that I used to say when I was like 24, and people would thought that was hilarious because I really did look like a teenager. And I guess now I'm starting to look a bit more my age, which is fine. You're also uncomfortable. Anyways, I was into that. It was 2005, and it's 4th year, and it's January, and I'm sitting at the campus pub with my 6 housemates, because that's how we rolled in Kingston. There was like a crazy amount of people in these tiny houses, and all of us were really involved in school. We weren't just like those we were engaged in our school life, maybe not our careers, but definitely in our school lives. For example, one of my housemates was the president of the student council, like AMS, it's a big deal at Queen's. I worked basically full-time at the campus pub, which sounds like a fun thing, but it was work and being very engaged in that whole student world. And all my housemates really worked full-time on campus. And so we're sitting around this table, and it's January 4th year. We look around, and we're all like, okay, graduating in 4 months, what are we going to do next? And the ironic thing, or I don't know if I'm using that word right, Alanis Morissette, is that we had actually already missed the main campus recruitment season, which you guys probably all know happens in September. But we're sitting there in January, and we don't know what we're going to do next. And this was the first time that it occurred to me that there was something wrong with the way that, at least in Canada, in my experience, that Canada transitions its youth from school and into the workplace. And maybe you guys can relate to this feeling. It's like you go to elementary school and you go through this whole school system, and you get towards like the end of the sort of mandatory high school system. And for a lot of people, college and university is something that's basically expected of you. It's not really a choice. It's just that next step. And then you get to the end of that next step of that post-secondary education, and all of a sudden, for the first time in your life, there's nothing planned out for you. There's no, very strongly suggested next step. There's no specific path that you can take. There's a ton of opportunity and also a ton of fear and stress and nothingness, right? And so me, in that fear in my 4th year, I did what a lot of students were doing at the time, what a lot of students continue to do, and I applied to grad school. And I ended up at the London School of Economics the next year, completing my master's in the only thing less valuable, listen to this, than my first degree in economics. What could possibly be less valuable?
Sociology.
Philosophy is the first guess every single time. Sociology, another popular guess. Anybody else? Psychology, that could be a valuable degree. But no, it wasn't psychology. Any last guesses before I tell you?
Poli-sci.
Poli-sci, all the guesses, usually people get it. My master's is in economic history. So if anybody, after this, I think we're going to the pub, if anybody here is curious to discuss the cost-benefit analysis of the use of quarantine as a preventative measure against cholera in 19th century Britain, I'm an expert, so we can but when I graduated from my master's, the situation was really different. That feeling, that fear was gone. And part of the reason was because in the UK, there is a much more defined transition from school to work. But the main reason for me that I was aware of from my position as a student approaching graduation was that there were these amazing websites that help students connect with employers for meaningful career launching opportunities. These websites understood that when you were graduating from having spent 3, 4, 5 years in post-secondary education, that you were looking for that first step into a workforce versus just a student job. Do you guys know the difference between, you know what I'm talking about? The difference between working at the Gap, which I did, working in a movie theater, which I did, all these different part-time jobs versus that first sort of career role. And I thought, this is awesome. Like, these websites are so helpful. And there's so much information here that helps me even figure out what I even want to do. And I used one of these websites called milkround.com. It was the biggest of very many of them in the UK at the time. And I got a great job working in consulting as an analyst for a company that's now part of the Boston Consulting Group. And I did that for a year in London. And a year, at the end of that year, I was facing a decision: do I stay in the UK and continue working, or do I move back to Canada, as my parents very much wanted me to, and try to find a job? And so I started looking into the Canadian market, thinking, you know, I'm kind of in the same position as I was a couple of years ago. I have a lot of education and I have a bit of work experience, but I'm not mid-career yet. I'm not experienced yet. There must be a site like milkround.com in Canada. But there wasn't. There wasn't anything even close. And so that's where the idea for TalentEgg was hatched. Because you guys are, like, I would call you business students, right? It's part of, yeah. Because you guys are business students, and really the rest of this presentation is about the business of TalentEgg, or goes through the business of TalentEgg. I'll tell you that at that point, a little background is that at that point I knew that TalentEgg was a good idea, because I knew that students needed it. Students needed a way to be able to connect with employers, and not just the ones that were coming to their campus. And you guys probably know very well that even though there are a lot of great employers that would want to hire you, they can't all come out here, right? And a lot of you are from BC, but the examples that I usually give is a student here who would be willing to work, let's say, in Toronto for the summer, but would have no idea of those jobs because traditionally in the campus recruitment world, in the student recruitment world, employers just went to the campuses that are kind of around them, right? And so we thought, and so the whole idea was that if we flatten this, if we facilitate access using the internet, not a novel idea, we can help students connect with meaningful jobs in a more effective way. But so yeah, I knew students wanted it, but I didn't know employers wanted it. So I spent 2.5 months writing a business plan, doing incredible in-depth research, but the most valuable thing I did was get on the phone and cold call employers in Canada, people I didn't know, and say, I'm a recent grad, I'm thinking about doing this. Students need it, but do you? And the vast majority of employers said to me, yes, we need this. Going to campus career fairs suck, and we can only go to a couple of them. And is anybody here from career services? Some employers like going to them, but a lot of them don't. And we would love to be online, but there's no place for us to display our brand outside of our website that honors the integrity of the roles that we're posting. So a great example is Craft's very prestigious internship program. They didn't want to post that on at the time the student job board was Workopolis campus. They didn't want that alongside a $15 an hour mowing lawn job. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, well that's great, because that's what I'm building, is this community that's just for these meaningful career launching opportunities. And that's how I knew that TalentEgg wasn't just a good idea, it was a business too. Is anybody here thinking about one day starting their own business? So that's the most important thing you can do, is figure out the idea, this part is easy, but you have to figure out where the money is. How is it a business or an idea? And that's really what I did through those cold calls. So TalentEgg today, we were the first, but we remain, after many, many, many copycats, the leading by far career site for students and recent grads in Canada. About 12,000 students use TalentEgg every single day to research career opportunities and apply for jobs. And we recently launched in the US as well. If you guys, you're already a step ahead of most of the students that I speak to, because you've made a decision to take a very career-focused course, unlike me, economic history, first degree in economics. One time I said that useless thing in front of my mom. She got so upset. So don't repeat it. TalentEgg has a lot of resources that can help you figure out, which career might be right for you. Lots of videos, etc. And that's why I'm saying you guys have a huge advantage, because we have a very large audience, and if I happen to think your video is better than everybody else's, I do have some pull at TalentEgg. We also have a very large social media community, of which I was telling Christina I am not responsible for at all. So, like I said, I'll go back. Something I should have said here is the idea with being exceptional is that as a student, there are a lot of stats that are being thrown at you right now. Has anybody heard about how we have like the highest youth unemployment rates, like ever? Doesn't even matter. Like the context for you guys is you know that you're gonna have a tougher time than other people finding work. Is that something you guys feel or hear about? In fact, next Thursday, TalentEgg is part of a documentary on CBC DocZone, which unfortunately is a doom and gloom story about how crappy the situation is for young people today. The Maclean's cover story last week was about how young people are screwed, essentially. It's awful, right? But when you look on it, that's the macro story. This like 15% youth unemployment or whatever it is. I don't even watch those numbers because I think they're bullshit. Because I think that, am I allowed to swear? There's no adults here, right?
Yeah.
It's on video, Lauren, that's right.
Viral after this on video.
The thing is on a micro level, when you speak to individuals, when you speak to individuals who have approached their careers in an exceptional way, and when I say exceptional, I don't mean in the best way or the smartest way. I mean with creativity, with innovation, with hustle, and by self-reflecting. They're never part of that stat. In fact, those people are the ones that have lofty, crazy goals, very specific goals, and they achieve them. And so you all have the potential and are already displaying signs of being exceptional in the way that you approach your career by being here on, what time is it? 7 o'clock? On a Friday? That's, and I know that sounds funny, but like, the fact that you're engaging your career like that already makes you exceptional. And so the whole idea with this is that being exceptional is this, and approaching things again with creativity, innovation, hustle, and self-reflection is an umbrella, this is cheesy, that can shelter you from any storm. And last night when I said that, it was very relevant because it happened to be raining outside. And I was shocked, like when it's raining in January, I'm from Ontario, that doesn't happen. And so to illustrate each of these things, creativity, innovation, hustle, self-reflection, I'm going to tell you stories, mostly TalentEgg stories, to illustrate what I mean by these things. And so creativity, creatively approach problems. When I mentioned, I actually didn't mention this, I moved back to Canada in January 2008, and TalentEgg launched in April 2008, and we had a little bit of buzz. We got quite a bit of press, actually. The story of recent grad can't find work, so starts a website to help future cohorts of recent grad or students. It really resonated with people. We were on breakfast television and in the Globe and the Post and all these different things. And we had about 30 employers that were doing free trials with us. But what happened shortly after April 2008? Yeah, major economic downturn, right? And so at the time, it was really just me. And so the calls went from being very positive and interested in learning more to the two most dreaded words, the words that wake me up at night, that I still have nightmares about: hiring freeze. Every single company that I called, I wanted to put a swear word in there, was on a hiring freeze. And not only were they on hiring freezes, but who were the first people to be being let go in all of these companies? Sorry? Last in, first out, right? There was there was so much fear in the economy and the market and every single company that I spoke to that, not only were they not hiring, but they weren't even keeping the people that they had brought in for internships the summer before. Everything was on pause. And so at that point, it would have been very, very easy for me as an entrepreneur who, had only at that point, put in some money, but nothing like crazy. I wasn't going to go bankrupt or anything. And, I still had other job opportunities. I always say in the world of entrepreneurship, for the first year, you become, every month that you do, you become more and more employable. But after year one, you become more and more unemployable because nobody wants to hire an entrepreneur. But so in that first year, I still had that opportunity to walk away. But instead, I thought, I'm going to stay. And then I thought, how can we have all this momentum, we have these great 30 companies, and they were big companies that had great jobs on the site, and we had a couple hundred students coming to the site every day from all the press that we had gotten. How can we keep up this momentum and weather this storm until things start picking back up again, and hoping that things pick back up again in the short term? And especially, how can we do this when the reason that students are coming to the site is for the jobs, and if there are no jobs, then no students will come. It was that chicken and egg problem. And so we thought, maybe we can start instead of relying on employers for content, for jobs, maybe we can start producing our own content. And so I had some interns from the summer, and one of them was a journalism student at Ryerson, and I said, would you be interested in writing some articles for TalentEgg? And I said, I don't think that these articles should be like the ones that students can find anywhere on the internet, like resume templates or 5 things to do on your resume, or the type of information that they can get from their career center. We have to make this different. We have to make it so that students will actually come here for something unique that they can't get anywhere else. So how about we do things that are from the perspective of recent grads, that are first-person accounts of things that worked for recent grads. And so we started writing with that sort of, that was the direction that we were taking. And we started publishing about 2 articles a day. We still publish 2 articles a day, and that became the incubator, which for anybody that uses TalentEgg on a regular basis, you know that's a huge part of the TalentEgg site, and we now have thousands, literally thousands, of articles and videos that are all first-person accounts, I'll say for the most part, first-person accounts of things that you can do to enhance your career, and because there are thousands, they are so specific. So for HR, for example, or anything that you're interested in, there is an article for that. It's like there's an app for that. Sorry, just thinking. So the incubator now, I said we have 12,000 students using the site every single day. 6,000 of those people come for the content. So it has now become a big issue. It's something that started out as trying to overcome a problem that we had, has now become the driver of half of the traffic to TalentEgg, and of course, those people then go and search for jobs, which is how the company works in general. So the message there is that, again, I could have looked at this problem and just quit, just walked away. Nothing would have happened. Nobody would have said, like, oh, you failed. No one really knew about it then. It was still, like, we weren't really well known at all. But instead, we creatively approached the problem, and the outcome not only, again, was a short-term Band-Aid fix, but something that became a long-term and huge part of TalentEgg as a company. See challenges as an opportunity to innovate. So innovation, applying innovation to your lives and your careers. In March 2011, we started receiving all these emails from students, not just emails, and like messaging from all different areas of the TalentEgg world. So emails, contact forms, tweets, Facebook messages, anything, like any way that our audience could connect with us, they were. In March 2011, saying it's gonna be summer soon, like 2 months from now. I am going to be looking for a summer job. Where are all the summer jobs? We don't see any summer jobs posted on your site. Where are they all? And we at TalentEgg started, we were banging our heads against the wall, because what we know, and something that is a very frustrating part of campus and student recruitment, is that, as you guys might know, the summer jobs are actually all posted in, please say you know, January. January is when all the big companies come out to campus and give these presentations and open their recruitment for a very short period of time, usually between the second week of January and maybe the first week of February. Some of them even come earlier now, back like in December. Procter & Gamble was doing their summer hiring. And we, just as a side note, don't agree with this. We don't think it's right. We think that students are completely reasonable to be looking for summer jobs in March, but the fact is that employers, their change is going to happen very, very slowly. And so the only thing that we could do at TalentEgg, and what we've been doing, what I've been shouting about, and what we've all been shouting about for years through all of our media partners, through everything, is students know that fourth year, or graduation hiring happens in September of your final year, and know that summer hiring happens in January. And so am I losing you here a little bit? I can get really passionate about that. I have gone on huge rants with employers about how stupid it is. And there's a reasoning behind it on the employer side, but for you guys, it's not reasonable and rational to be looking that far in advance. Anyway, so it's March, and we're just so upset that all these really bright and talented and engaged students and people that aren't just slackers that wait till the last minute. I mean, they're looking 2 months ahead. Like that's pretty good. Didn't know that they had already missed it. And by missing it, in a lot of cases, unfortunately, what happens in certain career paths, and not necessarily yours, but in marketing and engineering, and if you want to work for like the big companies, if you miss that that internship between your second final year, your second last year, and your last year, you're not getting into their program when you graduate. So like there are actual consequences. And so we're just like so upset about it. And we sat down and we said, how can we make it so that all these parties are talking to each other? How can we take what we're doing at TalentEgg, which is, you know, this business of running this job board and online resource, and really like start to change the way that this is all done so that all these parties can talk to each other, so that there's more transparency, so that the web, the internet is doing what it's actually supposed to be doing, which is facilitating access to all parties. We came up to this idea that was essentially just a blog called Student Voice, which encouraged, and the whole mantra behind it was mantra? I also say drama, but I think it's drama, so I don't know. You'll always correct me. Which one is this? Mantra? I'm getting conflicting. I don't know. Mantra was fighting youth underemployment by creating this platform where everybody could talk to each other. And yeah, the idea, we encourage students, employers, career services centers, we encourage parents, anybody who had a voice or an opinion on this to submit their story. So for students, it was talk about, share your story in finding a job or being unsuccessful in finding a job, what you liked, what you didn't like, and if you had the ear of a recruiter or an employer, what would you say to them? And we started receiving hundreds upon hundreds of submissions from students and employers and career services and all the different parties, because everybody wanted to have this voice, everybody wanted to be heard, and everybody wanted to change. What's the word that goes between? Wanted to create change. Thank you. That'll help me. And that innovation, I think not only did we win awards for it, it definitely made a dent. It got a lot of attention in the press because we were doing something to try to change this youth underemployment issue. I actually think the underemployment thing is much more significant than what people are talking about when they say unemployment. But most importantly, and I always talk about how these things have sort of unintended consequences, it caught the attention of the Metro. Do you guys read the Metro? And the Metro called us and said, this student voice thing is really cool. It would make really cool content for the Metro. If you guys send us one student voice every single week, we'll publish it across the country, read by 3 million people every single day. And at the bottom it can say, you know, TalentEgg, go visit talentegg.ca. It's the best site in Canada. Whatever, it says something like that. And then they said, this content's really, really good. You guys have that other section where you write content, the incubator. Can we have some of that too? And so now if you pick up the Metro on any Wednesday, every Wednesday, the entire education section is content from TalentEgg. I think we've been featured in Student Voice, or no?
Oh yeah, our club was, yeah.
Yeah. So it gets national attention. It's awesome, and we do it in the U.S. as well. So that's innovation and approaching issues in your career and opportunities that come up to you and problems with innovation. It was in that video that you showed actually, where one of the very impressive people said that every challenge is an opportunity for significant change or innovation. And I think that Student Voice is a good example of that. Is that scary dog? There was a weird dog outside before.
Yeah.
I think we were saying, anyone who reads our blog knows that we have 2 office dogs, Lily and Pancake. If you think Pancake's a stupid name, you can keep that to yourself. Because we named her at TalentEgg. They don't live at the office, they belong to our director of sales, and I thought it was funny to have this dog here because Lily and Pancake are both under 10 pounds. And Lily's, did I already say this, is hairless? She's not shaved, she's hairless. She actually has no hair. Very interesting dog. But she's just as vicious as this one. And I think this is probably the most important point when it comes to taking control of your career, making an impact in your career is hustle. And when I talk about hustle, I talk about taking control and doing something. So who here doesn't have a LinkedIn profile? Go home and make one. What are you thinking? Not because, and in my opinion, I think that LinkedIn still does a really bad job of representing what students bring and can contribute to the workforce. I think like it's dumb to have your headline is good, Steve, so not like you did a good job, but like most students don't have a headline like that, and you know what I'm talking about, the headline that goes right underneath your name that says like greeter at the Gap, or which was like me when I was a student, or economic history major, you know, like it doesn't really mean much. You're not a professional yet, and LinkedIn really is a professional network, but the reason it's important to have that, and I'll give you some examples after, for me is not for people to find you, but for you to find people. Because one of the most important hustly things you can do, I danced a little there. Do you want to see more of that? Come to the pub. No, no one's going to come. One of my favorite hustle moves is to reach out to people that you kind of want to be like, people that are like you but a couple years ahead, and ask to meet them or ask for a few minutes of their time in a polite way, in a way that respects their time. And I'll give some examples after because that's like my number one favorite career tip. It's something that has served me very, very well. When you're pressed against the wall like that, the things that you'll do, you'll see. Yeah, and that's what allowed us to sort of get through that period. That guy didn't like it? He was at my table, I know it's all good. So what can you do? This is a messy slide, but I wanted to put in a couple of examples in it. But you know, I've been telling you a lot of stories, and some of you are probably thinking, like, how can I apply these ideas of creativity and innovation and hustle to my own career? The internet makes it so much easier than ever to do these types of things, to take control of your career, to own your career, to be creative, to be innovative. I actually saw that Philip thing, that Amazon thing today. That's amazing. Those are the types of things. There are so many examples of it. One of my favorite recent ones, aside from that, which is probably what I'll use in the future, but is this guy who's a copywriter. He wanted to work for, there were 5 ad agencies he wanted to work for, and he just didn't know, how can I get the attention of these ad agencies when I'm just one guy who on paper looks like a clone of everybody else. And if you guys don't think you look like clones on paper, you're wrong, and I'm sorry, and I know that's so blunt, but it is. I'm looking for some reassurance. It is the truth. On paper, you look like clones. So what can you do to stand out? He knew this about himself. He's like, there are thousands of copywriters that would love to work at these companies. How do I stand out? So he found the names of the hiring managers, the lead guys, the 5 or girls at the 5 companies that he wanted to work at, and he bought Google AdWords so that when they searched for their own names, his ad would show up. Hi, Mike Smith. I know my name is John, and it was obviously beautifully written because he was a copywriter. And when all of those people inevitably Googled themselves, they found these ads and contacted him. He had offers from all 5. The thing about those examples and the Amazon examples that it can only be done once. There was a great story that was happening around when I was starting TalentEgg called, there's this girl, Jamie Barron, and she started this site called Twitter Should Hire Me. And she got so much attention. This girl was on CNN, like she was huge. And Twitter didn't hire her, but she ended up getting so much attention that she built a very impressive and very lucrative freelance career off of that endeavor. But again, the idea there is that you can't copy it. If you make an Amazon page now, it's not going to work. And all the people that after that made Facebook should hire me and LinkedIn should hire me and all those things, that didn't work. They didn't get that same attention. But the things that you can do, that you can take control of, is creating your own voice and your own brand using free and very accessible online tools, starting with the very basics of LinkedIn, but also using platforms, again, such as just blogging or Twitter or contributing to work on any sort of area that you're interested in. You guys are all into HR? Has anybody been published? Why not? It's so easy. You've been published? Tell me about it.
What would you like to know?
What were you published in? What did you do?
I've published poetry, journalism, and in like very minimal.
Cool.
Minimal. levels. But
Okay,
there's
so-
like a mini rush that you get from seeing your name in print.
For sure there is, and also when an employer looks for you and is trying to help distinguish you from everybody else that looks the same as you, that's going to make you stand out. Good little story in terms of I have no HR background. I wanted to stand out in the HR world. So when I was starting TalentEgg, I started writing all these articles that were a little bit inflammatory and probably really ill-informed about the death of resumes and how Generation Y in the workforce and all this different stuff. And I just sent them to the editor at the HR Reporter. And I said, this is what I wrote, this is what I believe. And he's like, great, published in the HR Reporter. And that started to develop my brand and TalentEgg's brand around thought leadership in campus recruitment and Generation Y recruitment. And you guys are all capable of that too. HR is actually when I'm sitting in front of an audience of people that don't know what they want to do or have no direction, I usually say start contributing to that through writing, through comments, through groups on LinkedIn, so that you can figure out what it is you want to do by sort of diving deeper into those industries. But for you guys that already know, it's pretty straightforward. There's so many HR people are probably one of the most active groups on the internet. It is fairly reachable, accessible for you to get involved with and contribute to content around the HR world and start developing your own voice and your own brand. So that when an employer is searching for you or looking to learn more about you, or when you're even in an interview and an employer says, okay, great, you have a degree in HR, but why you over the other person from your class? You can say, well, I'm really passionate about this specific area. I've written this article, or I'm familiar with this writer, or I went to this conference, or whatever it is that shows that you have not only the education, but a demonstrated interest and passion for this area, for this career. Does that make sense? Do you know what the two most important questions that an employer will ask you in an interview, from my experience? Why do you want to work in this industry or in this function? And why do you want to work at this company? And if you don't take the time to engage in your career, to dive in deep and contribute to it and build a brand around it and a brand around you, you will not be able to effectively or convincingly answer those questions. I have a great example. I was interviewing. I worked the summer between my third and fourth year of university. I did an internship at Scotia Capital. But I interviewed at a bunch of different banks in the process. And in those interviews, one guy asked me, so like you read the business section of the Globe and Mail today, it's crazy what's happening with Nortel, which really makes me feel old. And because Nortel doesn't exist. And they're like, there's something about them in the stock market, whatever. And I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about, and I couldn't even engage with him in that conversation. I couldn't answer what I had read in the paper that day because I hadn't read the paper. In fact, I had read the entertainment section of anything, right? And so, of course, like that is not an interview that I was successful in because I wasn't truly, and I wouldn't have been successful in that career long term because I wasn't truly engaged in that career or in that industry. So, step one, get a LinkedIn profile. Step two, engage in your industry, in your, I'm not saying the right word, in your career path, in your, I don't know,
Your career
field?
environment.
Yeah, in the HR world. There's so much. Was anybody here following the HRPA 2013 hashtag this week on Twitter? Some of you? Good. Hands up. I told you this would be a hands up thing. I've let you put your hands down for way too long now. There was so much information being shared, so many relevant articles being shared. It's really easy to jump in on that conversation. Get involved. Get yourself a voice. It's so accessible and reachable for you. And like I said, my other favorite career move that I still do today is reaching out to people that you admire, that you feel are a few steps ahead of you in your career, that you want to be like in a few years, and ask them for their time. What's the worst thing that can happen if you find 10 people who you admire, look up to, who you think you could learn something from, and none of them write back? What's the worst thing that can happen? Nothing, right? And that doesn't mean to spam people. I should make a really big distinction. But the best thing that can happen is that one of them writes back to you and says, I would love to speak with you. I do have 15 minutes for you to take me out for a coffee. I am interested in learning about what you're interested in and giving your feedback on my career. And that's part of the reason to meet with those people isn't to go and ask them for a job. You guys all know about the informational interviewing. It's about actually being, you talk about being interested and interesting. It's about being interested in them and learning about them. And that to me, like again, for you guys who are more focused on your careers, this isn't as relevant, but if I'm speaking to a room of people who don't know yet, it's about getting that inside view into what it's really like to be the person that you think you want to be, and figure out if it's actually what matches what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at. I think that those are, and that's something that I did when I did in my early career, and I'm still in my early career. Something I still do today. I have a great story of reaching out to Bonnie Brooks from the Bay. Do you guys get those commercials here? Like, hi, I'm Bonnie Brooks. My Bonnie Brooks impression. I reached out to her, and her assistant or some like person that I don't like very much bounced my email right into HR being like, if you want to do business with us, you should reach out to this person. I was like, no, I didn't want to do business with you. I was interested in your CEO because I think that she's like inspiration, whatever. I didn't write that but the worst thing and I didn't engage in that conversation, but the worst thing that can happen is nothing. And there have been a lot of opportunities where something has happened, where when I was starting and I wanted to understand what is the online recruitment world like, the founder of this amazing site that ended up being acquired really quickly, Jobloft. If you watch Dragon's Den, you probably know what Jobloft is. He picked up the phone and spent an hour talking to me, all these great journalists at the beginning, and I didn't even realize the impact that building those relationships with journalists so early would have. Picked up the phone and talked to me. Lots of people over my life, over my career, have accepted that request to talk to them. And I've learned very much by now being on the receiving end of a lot of requests to talk to me. I can give you 2 quick stories about how to do it and how not to do it based on just requests that I got this week. One young lady reached out to me. We get a lot of requests, not just to meet with me, but a lot of students do school projects on TalentEgg. It's really, what happened to my voice there? It's really weird, like, not weird, it's like a lot of entrepreneurship classes have this thing where you're supposed to reach out to a business and get a bit of information on them, and we're student facing, so we're an obvious choice. We get tons of emails from students that are doing projects on TalentEgg. And usually, I'm so happy to talk to you on the phone for 15 minutes and give you feedback because I think that's awesome, and it's great publicity for us because then that's shared with your class, right? But this young lady reached out to me and said, hi, I'm doing a project. I've attached a Word document with 5 questions. They each require at least a 200-word answer. But if it's easier, you can just send me your business plan. Which, for anybody who's written a business plan, you don't just share that. Sorry. And I obviously didn't write back to that. On this week, I also got an email from a young aspiring entrepreneur that said, Lauren, I've been following TalentEgg for the past couple of years. I follow you guys on Twitter. I think it was cool when you did this, and congratulations on that. And I'm going to be in Toronto on this day, and I was wondering if I could bring you a coffee to your office at a time that's convenient for you, and share with you something that I'm up to and pick your brain a little bit. And I'd love to learn more about some of the stories that you went through, some of the challenges you faced when you started TalentEgg. And of course, to that I said yes. So the lessons there are 1, flattery will get you everywhere, for real. And but more seriously, showing respect for people's time and showing that you've done your research and all that kind of stuff. That's the way to go, and you'll increase your odds from 1 out of 10 to 5 out of 10 if you do those things. So that's my biggest career tip to you. Reach out to people, meet with people as many as you can. A great story, one of our writers, am I okay? One of our writers recently shared with our content mentor, Cassandra, who everybody who's written for TalentEgg and done a student voice knows Cassandra. She was that first intern that I made cold call all summer and then became the editor of the incubator and now manages all the content across. We have a whole site that's for employers as HR professionals who might be interested in TalentEgg360.com. All about like best practices in recruiting Generation Y. Anyways, she, what was I saying? Oh yeah, a writer was sharing her with her recently. Is there an animal in here?
Person out there.
Oh my god, I got so scared. I love dogs, but I'm also afraid. A writer shared with her that her mentor last year challenged her to have 52 meetings in 2012. And she did it. She had 52 meetings. What do you think came out of that? But at the end of that, she had not 52 job offers. That guy also doesn't like it. It's okay. Let's all look at it. But she got her dream job, which is she works for a sports company, like a sports team in social media. And I just think that was a great challenge to give. And I challenge you all to maybe not 52, but try to meet with as many people as you possibly can. Get as much feedback on your career choices, to learn more about career paths, to build your networks outside of your school. The last part of this concept of being exceptional, approaching your career in an exceptional way, is to self-reflect. Is to look at the things that you've done in the past to inform you on what might be successful or what might work for you as a career in the future or in your life. I mean, this can very more broadly be applied to life. For me, if I had done this self-reflection, if I had followed my own advice now, I would have figured out that starting a company was the right thing for me to do right from the beginning. I probably would have saved myself the experience in London, though it was a fantastic experience, and that year as a consultant, and those summers and working part-time at Scotia and all that stuff. Because when I was a teenager, I had this amazing, crazy, lofty dream. And my pursuit of getting that dream, of making that dream a reality, showed that this, being an entrepreneur, starting a company, and in the future starting many more companies, was where I would be successful, is where I would stand out. When I was a teenager, bear with me and don't laugh, make them laugh, I wanted to be a famous, successful actress. Everybody feels a bit uncomfortable again. I don't know about that. I didn't just want to be did anybody in high school ever play that game of life where you get, you're like given a career and they tell you how much money you make and you have to budget and stuff? When I got that game, I got being an actor, and it was like, I got like $500 a week and it wasn't enough to live on, and I was like scraping by in this game. And I thought, I don't want to be an actor like that, trying to suffering for everything. I want to be like Jennifer Aniston. I want to be Julia Roberts. I want to be like famous. I want to be accepting an Academy Award. Like that guy on my team. For his acting work just recently. And I thought, how can I make this happen? This is just the type of thing that happens to like 1 in a bazillion people. How do I take control of this and make this happen? So the first thing that I did is I went down to this place in Toronto called Theatre Ontario, and they had this actual cork board with jobs posted on it. That is where the word job board comes from. Again, making me sound old. And one of the jobs on it stood out to me. It was actually a child role. There weren't many child roles, and it was to play a little boy in a professional production of Macbeth. And I thought, perfect, whatever, I'll audition for this. And so I auditioned for this little boy character, and I got it. I had 2 lines in a professional production of Macbeth for school groups, and I was like, great, okay, I got that credit under me. You need credits in order to you need to get these things in order to become part of the union and all that. I'm like, okay, first credit down, but I know, what's the next step? I need an agent, because through an agent I can get auditions. So how do I get an agent? So I'm doing this theater show, and in Macbeth, the witches, at least in my production, were like the cool girls. Like they were the cool people in the cast, and so I befriended them because I thought they'll be the ones who have agents. Maybe they can help me and introduce me. And one of them did have an agent, and I said, "Did you think there's any way that he might be willing to come down to the show sometime this week? And maybe he can introduce me?" And she's like, "Ooh, okay, you're kind of annoying." So she invites her agent, and afterwards she introduces me to him, and he's like, "Well, you know what? I don't really represent kids," and he was blowing me off. He's like, "I'm not really that interested. Whatever. You can try contacting this person and this person." And I was like, "Well, who's the person? I need to know what the person's name is." And I kept on pushing and pushing until he said, "Well, here's the person's name. I'll introduce you." So he introduces me to the child agent within his agency. And I go meet with her, and I'm so excited. I'm like, great, I'm finally going to have an agent. Because similar to applying to jobs, when you try to get an agent, you're just sending in essentially a resume and a headshot, and you are like a clone of everybody else. And in my case, she told me, "You're not pretty enough, you're not talented enough, I'm sorry." I said, "I'm not taking no for an answer. I'm not talented, I can't really work on the pretty thing, but I can work on the talented thing." So I went back to school, and I asked my drama teacher to help me. and to coach me and to videotape me doing monologues. And so every week she would take me doing another monologue, and I would send that monologue to the agent. I would call her to follow up to make sure she got it and say, now will you take me on? And every week she'd say no. And several weeks went by, and finally she's like, if you stop calling me, I will take you on my roster. And so I was great. I got an agent. She started sending me on all these auditions. But in the meantime, I said, okay, well now all the control is in her hands, and I'm not very comfortable with this. I need to be able to control this. I need to be able to control my success. And so I thought, how can I do that? This is so annoying. There's someone in between me and like being Julia Roberts. So I thought, well, the internet's kind of like this nifty thing that's around right now, and it's the late 90s, and I'd already been hanging around some like message boards and stuff, and I was a moderator on CompuServe. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but it's kind of a big deal at the time. It was a really early internet geek. I thought, well, what if I started this website for young actors and try to build a sort of a brand around, and I definitely didn't think of it that way at the time, but that's what I was doing, building a brand around this whole concept of young actors. And so I bought this domain, again, like really, this was like 98 or so. I bought a domain, bigdreamers.com, which is so cheesy, and I wish I had it still, because it would be a valuable domain now. And I built this website. I learned HTML by looking at source code on other people's websites, and I made some cheesy graphics, and it had frames and all these things that were like pretty high end at the time. And I put a message board on it, and it was really like and it had a chat room, and so for the time, it was a really like Web 2.0 site for the Web 1.0 world, and we had like 30 to 50 visitors a day. I had 30 to 50 visitors a day, which was a big deal again at the time. Like Google wasn't really a thing then. There were multiple search engines, and there was no SEO or anything like that. So, you know, helping that many people find the site was a big deal. We got a little thing in the Toronto Star. There's a little tiny article, which I thought was the coolest thing ever. And I started to go on more auditions, and I went on 20 auditions, 30 auditions, 40 auditions. No, and I kept on going to the auditions, and I kept on building the site. And on audition, like 50 something, I finally got my first job. And it was in a Pizza Pops commercial, which you actually might remember. It was part of the Stop the Rumble campaign. And I was played and you'll guess this, I played a goth. And my entire role in the commercial was the teacher walks by me and I go like this, ready for it? And that was it. And then I got, very shortly after, I got another commercial for Much Music and Coke, where I was a cashier. And in this one, this was my role in English and French. That's it. And I did literally, because my t-shirt, the t-shirt I was wearing, and it was like, had writing on it, so we literally did have to do it in English and French. And then I thought, and then I was 17 and a half or so at the time, and I thought, okay, well now it's time to go to university and study economics. So obviously that's where that story ends. But the reason I tell you that is because, like I said, if I had self-reflected on that, it's very clear from that story that there were a lot of things that I displayed through that experience that would lead to a reasonable guess that I would do well as an entrepreneur. I was relentless. I stood up to a lot of no's. That's something you have to, you probably know this, or maybe you don't. Maybe you're just a yes in the yes world, but probably not. In most businesses, it's like no, barrier. And a number of other things. And so I challenge you all to go home this evening, or maybe you've been thinking about it already, and find something that's happened to you or something that you've done in the past where you've stood out a little bit from everybody else, where what you've done is different, or where you felt really passionate, or that you were doing something that was right. And I don't know how to, I still haven't found in all the times I've talked about this the right words, but do you guys know what I'm talking about? In some situations where you approached a problem, or you approached a dream or a goal or something a little bit differently than everybody that was around you. And there were people said to you like you're good at that, whether it was in a leadership position, whether it was directing a play in high school, whether it was being a really great member of a team, sometime where you were just having like the best time and really enjoying. We talk about like go for your career. What was the passion thing? Follow your passion. Figure that out, because when you find that and when you can apply that to your career, when you can find a role that allows you to follow your passion, you will perform at a level that is very different from the level that you'll perform in every other opportunity. when I was a analyst in consulting, I was a good analyst. I was 8:30 to 5:30, and I did a good job, and I got good feedback. And I was good at my job, but I was never great. And then when I started TalentEgg, I'm not the best, but there's something that's shown that I didn't even know was inside me, something that is an energy that I didn't know that I had before. I didn't know that I could get up and speak to audiences before TalentEgg, to be honest. And so I urge you to find that in you so that you can find the career that brings that out in you. And like I said, being exceptional, approaching your career in an exceptional way, approaching your life in an exceptional way will shield you from any of these really doom and gloom stats, from this idea of being a clone to everybody else, which I know is an awful thing to say, but it's unfortunately the truth on paper, and will allow you to find a career where you are a star. Thank you.